Hey, so today I wanted to do a quick video comparing the Aune SR7000 to the Sennheiser HD620S. I was planning on also putting the Focal Azuris in this video. I didn't really vibe with that headphone very well, so it would have turned into me just talking about how I like both of these a lot better than what those are doing. So I figured it'd probably be best to just not have them in the comparison. So we're just going to look at these two today. I know I did a review, kind of like first impressions review of the SR7000 a couple months back. I've had a lot more time to listen to them since then. So I kind of wanted to revisit that. And I feel like what I did in that last video was mostly a comparison to the open back AR5000, which I don't know if that's really a fair comparison when you're talking about comparing open backs and closed backs. So I wanted to get another pair of well-regarded closed backs to try to give a little bit more of a fair view of what Aune is trying to do there. So first off, there's a price difference here. We're looking at retail is $350 for the 620S, and for the Aune it is $600. So that's a $250 difference. That's a pretty big deal. So I'll go through kind of what comes with the two headphones, because that should start to explain a little bit of the price difference. So with the HD620S, basically all you get is you get this pouch that you can put the headphones into. It's fine. So let me see if I can put them in there like that, and you can cinch them up. And I guess that provides some level of protection, but yeah, I don't know if I would feel comfortable just tossing them around in my backpack like that. It'd probably be fine. And then they also come with a single-ended cable with a 1/4-inch adapter. They do make balance cables for them. The one from Sennheiser I noticed was a little pricey, but I was able to get one off Amazon that was for the I think it was for the HD 560, and it uses the same smaller connection here. So you can get aftermarket cables to get a 4.4 millimeter balance connection, or I assume XLR2, but I was using 4.4 balance for most of my stuff. So with the Aune, what you get is you get this really nice case. Let me get it a little more in frame. You get this case that really fits the headphone nicely. Let's see if I can get it in there. It's molded really well for the headphone. And then it's got just these really nice zippers on the side. I'm not going to go through the trouble of zipping all that back up right now. And then you also get a 3.5, a dual 3.5 to 3.5 cable. It's really similar to what comes with the AR5000. The only difference is the little end caps here are black instead of silver. Nice little touch with the Aune there on that. But the cool thing with this is it comes with the balanced cable. So before this headphone came out, I think Aune was selling this similar cable, if not exactly the same. They were selling it for $50. So that's a good value inclusion. And I know we're talking about a headphone that's, $250 more expensive than the one I'm comparing it to. So it's a really nice cable. I like this one a lot. This is the one that I've been using most of the time. The other one's convenient if I'm using a source that doesn't have 4.4. But I've been doing most of my comparisons with either the FIO K11 R2R DAC amp, and I've recently purchased the Aune S9C reference DAC, which is a lot more powerful than amp. So this is what I've been listening to most of the time. Get these back out of the case. Okay, so those are the accessories that come with it. Obviously, the Aune comes with nicer accessories. You would expect that from the pricier headphone. So let's talk about maybe some fit and comfort here. So the SR7000 is extremely comfortable. I really like the suspension strap headband here. The pads here are kind of a pleather material that kind of have a slow rebound. So these, I think, are more comfortable than the ones that come with the AR5000. I think this is an improvement for comfort, but they are also an improvement for sound. I did switch the pads from the AR5000 onto the SR7000, and what I noticed is it did brighten up the treble a little bit, but it also, the sound isolation got a lot worse, which makes sense. So if you do get these and you're thinking about pad swapping, I would probably just keep the stock pads on it. I think that's their best performance is doing that. But they're really comfortable. The only thing I could potentially see a problem with is they are on a little on the heavier side. It didn't bother me at all. I don't have an exact weight. I should have gotten that before I started this video, but they are a little bit heavy and they don't clamp very hard. So if you're planning on moving around a lot with them, I don't think that's really the best use case for these. So that could lead me into these, which are the 620S. So this right here is really comfortable. I found these more comfortable than the other headphones that shared a similar platform, because even though these are the 620S, the body shares a lot more with the 560. So other than, you know, this right here, the padding on the top and the padding here, they feel a lot more similar to those headphones. But these have a tighter clamp force, which could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. I actually liked it. I felt like it was pretty comfortable. Like, you might have a little bit of a break-in period with them, but once you just wear them for a few hours, they should break in pretty nice. They are also more isolating. So neither of them are obviously, you know, active noise canceling headphones, so they're not gonna drown out sound that way. But the passive noise isolation on these was better than the SR7000. And I also found, like, if I'm wearing these connected to my DAP and walking around the house, like these are staying on my head. So I think these are a good use case for that. I don't think I would recommend these for exercising, because there would be a pretty big buildup of heat inside that ear cup. And I don't know what the long-term effects would be over time for these headphones. I don't think they're designed for that. So I think that, they could be used for on the go, but I wouldn't use them for exercising exactly. So it is interesting to note that both of these headphones are doing something similar, and that is they are putting the driver kind of at an angle. I don't know if you can probably kind of hard to tell that. But I think that is in an effort to help with the imaging and the soundstage. It's kind of putting it a little bit angled in front of your ear, or kind of matching the slant of your ear. I think it does a good job. I think both headphones benefit from that when it comes to the soundstage and the imaging. It kind of makes me wonder if maybe companies are starting to figure out a way to overcome some of the limitations of closed back by angling that driver inside of the ear cup. I don't know if other headphone makers other than Sennheiser and Aune are doing this. They very well could be. I'm just not familiar with it. The power required for both of these headphones is actually really similar. I thought that the 620S was harder to drive initially, but once I got a balanced cable for it and was comparing apples to apples and using the balanced of the SR7000 and balanced of the 620S, I was able to basically keep the same volume across my amps and everything. Maybe one click different. And I would say maybe, just very marginally, maybe the 620S are slightly harder to drive. But I really don't think it's that big of a difference at all. So I'll get into the sound now. We'll start talking about this. For the bass, I think the SR7000 has a really clean presentation of bass. It's not going to like really punch you in the chest. It's not going to slam. But I do think it is just fairly balanced across the board. I do think it has better bass than the AR5000. I think initially when I did that comparison, I may have said otherwise, but I think either letting some brain burn-in happen or some actual burn-in on the drivers. I'm not going to debate that topic. I do think that they have good balanced bass, basically maybe a little bit better than what the AR5000 does. The 620S, I think, has an even bigger bump in the mid bass. So I felt like I was really feeling a good kick with, bass drums and bass guitars were cutting through the mix pretty well, and any sort of pop electronic music, I felt like that beat was hitting a little harder on the 620S than it was the SR7000. That could get a slightly bleeding into the mids a little bit on the 620S, but it was never a huge, the bass never felt super bloated or anything on the 620S. For the mid-range, I felt like the SR7000 has a pretty accurate sounding mid-range. You'll probably hear me say this a lot. It feels very accurate. It feels very balanced. I felt like the mid-range sounded really good on these headphones. And I think this is one of the more noticeable things when switching back and forth between the two, because I felt like the 620S, in comparison, the mid-range was definitely recessed compared to the SR7000. I don't know if you were listening to these headphones just by themselves, if it's something that would jump out at you, but it was definitely noticeable going back and forth between the two. So if you're someone who really values like mid-range presentation, the SR7000 definitely does that better for me. With treble, I do feel like the SR7000 initially gave me the impression that maybe it was a little too recessed in the treble, but I think maybe getting a little bit better power to them, like this S9C, or like I said earlier, or potentially Burn-In, it started to just feel more correct. I do think it probably rides that line of, is it a little too relaxed? Probably for some, if you really want those bright, details like a Hyphaman headphone might have, that like this is definitely going to sound recessed compared to that. But the more I listened to it, the more I started noticing like hi-hats and cymbals for drums, or the more percussive elements to acoustic guitars. They just sounded correct. They didn't sound overbearing. Whereas with the 620S, I do feel like there was a slight elevation in the treble, not even necessarily compared to these, but compared to the other headphones that I also have in hand, like the normal HD 600 and the AR5000. I do feel like these were pretty strong in the treble, getting close to where it was almost a little too bright for me. So I already mentioned a little bit about the driver angle and how both of these headphones are kind of like sitting on your ear at that angle, and they both have that angled driver to kind of match your ear. I really think that helps with soundstage. I really think these are two of the best sound stages that I've ever heard in a closed back headphone, and I think both companies did a really good job really working on the technology and really trying hard to get something new in a closed back that hasn't been done before as far as that's concerned. And with imaging, I felt like maybe with imaging I was able to pick out where things were coming from slightly better with the 620S than the SR7000. But that was a pretty small difference there. So that's how I think these headphones sound. I probably, I got to give both do different things really well. So I think if you're looking for something where you are sitting at a desk most of the day, but you need a closed back option, say you're in an office somewhere, or you are someone else's, in the room with you, or maybe you want to also drown out other things that are going on around you, I think the SR7000 are really good for that. If you're going to be kind of sitting in a somewhat quiet space and you just need a pair of closed back headphones that sound correct, I think these are better. One thing I didn't hit on is these just feel a little more premium, like the kind of metal titanium that's going on here, and this headband being what it is versus the plastic, mostly plastic, of the HD 620S. I think there's a good use case for the 620S for if you're planning on using these, you have a really noisy environment and you need a closed back, these are going to isolate sound a lot better. I also think if your use case is more on the go, like if you think you want to travel with these on an airplane and you want wired and you don't want to deal with Bluetooth or anything that has a battery inside of it, I think these would isolate the sound from the people around you to where you could use them for that. I do wish maybe these cups could swivel all the way down so they could be a little more compact, or if they had a case better than this, I think that would be better as well. Yeah, so for me, I'm more of a sitting at my desk listening to headphones type of person, and then occasionally, you know, I might walk around my house and have these on, but I also have IEMs for when I use when I'm exercising or walking around. So these kind of blur the line between use cases with IEMs or headphones. I do think they're good. I prefer the sound better from the SR7000. I do think they are a better headphone. So I think it's just going to come down to what you need out of a headphone to determine which one of these will work for you. And another thing I'll mention that I didn't mention earlier. So you can run them balanced, but obviously you only have one termination here for these. So it doesn't have a hookup for both headphones. That worries me a little bit just because I know that there's got to be some wire that's running through here, which leads to another potential issue, like if something in there happened. Whereas obviously these are dual connected 3.5 millimeters. So if anything ever happened, you could potentially just replace one, you know, the entire headband could be taken apart and replaced, and you could keep your drivers. So things like that make the Aune seem like maybe they'd be easier to fix an issue in, but also everybody knows Sennheiser is pretty rock solid, and they've been around for a long time, and their stuff lasts. One more thing, the pads and taking them on and off. So the Sennheisers were interesting. They kind of like clip in there, and you probably can't tell this on a video, but I took it off one time and I had a little bit of a hard time getting this like plastic hidden back inside of there. It's more based on looks. It doesn't change the functionality at all, but just be aware, like if you take these off and then snap them back on, it might be hard to hide that plastic part again. Maybe I just did it wrong. I haven't looked up a video on how to do it. Whereas the SR7000 are pretty traditional. Like you can just kind of pull this here and pull it away, and they can come off, and it's fairly easy to get the pads off and back on. But like I said, I'm not sure I would really recommend pad rolling on these because it feels like they did a really good job designing these pads to sound the way that they do with this headphone. I don't know about these. I don't know if you could add different pads to them or not. I know they are I know this headband and these pads I think are new for the 620S. So yeah, I like both headphones. They have their different use cases. If I had to choose one, I would pick the SR7000. I think it's probably the best closed back I have heard. I don't have an extensive experience with a lot of closed backs, but I think it's really good. I think it's just kind of up to you if the extra money is worth it for you for these headphones. For me, it is. So I really like those. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about these two, or like I said, I also have my HD 600s on hand that I was doing a little bit of comparisons to the 620S, and then still have my AR 5000 on hand that I use occasionally when I can use some open backs. All right, see y'all at the next one.